pharmaceutical companies that have more heft than governments, who by their stranglehold over intellectual property rights were literally able to decide who lived and who died. And we know where the burden of the deaths fell. The burden of the deaths fell on black and female bodies in the global south and also in the north. And that in turn exposed a much bigger problem than just health inequality. It exposed the social and economic inequality caused by structural racism and patriarchy in our world. And we also saw during COVID the ability of far-right populist politicians around the world to foster and exploit fear and division that all of this created. And I have to say, so I'm standing in front of you today as a white person, originally from the US, and running an organization that has headquarters in the Netherlands. And also as someone who's been a squatter in Southern Africa for over 25 years, in this amazing, beautiful, gorgeous, challenged, difficult part of the world. And I have never experienced anything other than tolerance and acceptance based on shared humanity from the awesome people in the Southern African region. And that makes me ashamed and painfully aware that the tradition and the country I personally represent are not ones that exemplify tolerance and shared humanity. So I think it's really important to acknowledge that these massive inequalities that COVID-19 laid bare in our world, and that continue and are getting worse today with the climate emergency, with the cost of living crisis, and other factors, that these inequalities have their roots in colonial and neo-colonial exploitation of black and female bodies. And these injustices are not just old history. They're not just pass-through wounds. They are being replicated every day. Whether in the killing fields of Gaza, whether in the debt crisis, that means that even now, 2 years after COVID, African countries are still spending 6 times as much on debt servicing as on their health budget, or even in the silent deaths of millions of people in the global south, the refusal of the West to kick its overconsumption habit based on relentless and reckless expansion of fossil fuels. I don't know if you saw yesterday the headline from Oxfam that the richest 1% account for more carbon emissions than the poorest 2/3 around the world. And we all know where those 2/3 live. They are here. They are in Latin America. They are in the Middle East and North Africa. They are in South Asia. And the refusal of rich countries to pay reparations to compensate for the staggering current and future loss that global warming is causing, which is the loss not only of livelihood and lives, but also of sacred places, knowledge, and culture. So when we at HEVOS talk about paths to renewal, we believe the issue of decolonialism and its import for Africa and the world must be at the forefront. Finding paths to renewal also means tackling new technologies such as AI, the explosion of social media and the false news and disinformation that comes with it, and also looking at sustainability, wellness, and mental health of critical free expression creatives. Paths to renewal ultimately is about optimism. There was a political activist during the time of fascism who was one of his sayings was, we must have pessimism of the intellect, but optimism of the will. So pessimism of the intellect is to confront and understand the gravity and the difficulties and the depth of the challenges that face us as we try to create a better future and a better world. But the other half for him was optimism of the will. And that is the belief that another world is possible. And for this group, I think it's also optimism of the imagination, because it's through creativity that we tap into the sources that can generate the other world that we need to leave this bubble. Because the world we're in now is a dead end. So the role of creatives is helping to imagine and explore what that other world could be in a Pan-African sense and a global sense is of critical importance. We need criticality and progressive counter-narratives because democracy and free expression count more than anything else for Pan-African and world peace and organic. So as EVOS, we remain committed to working and supporting free expression in Africa and other regions that we work in. But we're aware that things are not the same anymore as they relate to sustainability, funding, and we are looking at newer ways to support critical content creators like yourselves to enable them to create organic African counter-narratives that challenge structural racism, that challenge patriarchy, that challenge neocolonialism, and that challenge all repressive norms that deny human beings their dignity, their creativity, their emancipation. Not only in African societies, but globally, especially when they relate to the global South. So this for us is a really important gathering, and we look forward to learning and being inspired and being reinvigorated and renewed by you and your ideas. Thanks so much.
Okay, I don't think you heard me before. I know before it was music, but there's a lot of powerful points in there. And what do we do? Do you remember the instruction? Okay, we're gonna do it. We're on the count of three. 1, 2, 3, go. You see, I can be a preschool teacher one day. Anyway, kidding. Thank you very much once again to Angela, our CEO for HIVOS. And before that, Nana Zulu, who is the regional director for HIVOS. And to say thank you very much for allowing us to hosting us in your wonderful country. Lusaka is indeed a wonderful place. I would mention something about Victoria Falls, but then Zimbabweans and Zambians would start fighting in this room. So while we set up for the next part, I wanna go through the room and ask a question. A simple question. What are your expectations in as far as this? I'm gonna start with you. When you came here, what was your expectation?
To learn from every leader, to understand everyone's journey, and to just take every single thing and see how it can apply it to my life.
Okay, that's a wonderful one. Okay, come here. I see deep thinking over here.
What do I take away from this event? I think for me, it's a validation of the new Africa, the new belief of Africa, the people who are at the forefront of redefining that narrative and a celebration of Africanness.
And over here, the wonderfully colored dress area, I would never wear like that. What are your expectations?
I came to explore more about Pan-Africanism. Also, I would like to connect and interact with different people from different countries.
Cool. And isn't it so exciting that we've got a partner in HIVOS, African Crossroads, as a platform that allows us to come and be part of such creative expression and understanding of where we stand in the world, and also not just understanding, but I remember having a chat with a couple of people yesterday that when you speak to other Africans, you see parts of yourself that sometimes you don't see because you don't express them. What results in some of the times is things that you put at the back of your mind and never become forefront. So we're going to have a first presentation. The presentation is on the creative ecosystem pathways to ownership, and I'm going to introduce onto the stage Rudonya Ngulu from Zimbabwe. Please give her a applause as she comes onto the stage.
Thank you. Good morning. This is in no way going to be the opening speaker in terms of the presentations today, which I found out yesterday, so you have to bear with me, the nerves are like on 100. When I was asked by Shemisa to come and speak at this event, initially I thought she was more sort of, do you want to come learn something? Can you come and be a part of what we're doing? And then she later it was like, no, actually we want you to come and say something. Come and talk to us, come and share some of the insights from your journey. Now, my background, I am the director of Stimulus Africa. It's an entrepreneurship and innovation hub and consultancy based in Harare, in Zimbabwe. And over the last maybe 12 years, we've been working with various entrepreneurs, maybe some of you in the room as well, in partnership with HIVOS and other partners who do regional work around building capacity for creatives. And what I've learned in that journey is part of what I'd like to share with you this morning. But for us to be able to look forward in terms of the pathways and where we're going, I think it's important for us to reflect on where we're coming from. So if we think about the things we lost in the fire, as young Africans, we are plagued with socioeconomic challenges. We have different political economies in our countries that have a huge impact on our ability to move forward. I'm 42. Please don't tell anyone. Let's keep it between us. And as a 42-year-old who's been working for a very long time that we won't mention, I should be able to own a house, have maybe even multiple properties and various assets if I was living in the global north, for example. But because I live in Zimbabwe, which has an economy that's been eroded by inflation, corruption, and various aspects of sort of negative social construct, I'm in a position where I probably can't get a loan from a bank. I've never really tried because I assume they'll just say no. And because of that, every single thing that I want or that I desire to own, I've had to actually work for and pay for as cash. Whereas my counterparts of a similar age in the north can get a 0% mortgage, can get credit cards, and basically just live on credit. Life seems easier for them than it does for us. One of the things we've lost in the fire of our social and political environment, like this young man here, is the ability to move forward and move ahead as young people. We are trapped, we are to an extent, crippled by the environment that we find ourselves in and the leaders that we find ourselves with. And it is in many ways easy to say, well, what can we do? Not much. So this is who we are. This is what we're living. Other things we lost in the fire, I think you mentioned COVID. It feels like yesterday, literally was yesterday. For many of us, I mean, the horror and loss of family illness, and for many people even living with post-COVID illness, it's made it even harder to be a young African because everything that I said before about our economy, our politics, our leadership, add COVID on top, and we're probably struggling. We're not in the best possible place. Yeah? And in thinking of the spirit of this summit and pathways to renewal, to moving forward, we can't sort of gloss over the reality of what we've been through and where we are. The reality being also, for many of us young creative entrepreneurs, things that we've lost in the fire is the ability to build sustainable enterprises. We are, like her, having to develop our small creative businesses at home on our beds. We can't afford an office. We're not economically marketable. We can't punch above our weight against lawyers, doctors, other professions that seem to have more access. So being a young creative today, where we are, is it's a challenge. Would you agree? Is that just me? No? Are we all on the same page? Okay. So enough of the doom and gloom, no more fire. Where do we go from here? So what are the pathways? How do we build resilience with all of that background, with all of that context of who we are, where we're coming from, the reality of what we're living, why we're living that way? I've been doing some research over the last 2 years around creative ecosystems and creative groupings of people, creative collectives. And what I've learned in studying how we have sort of survived through COVID and even before is that resilience has really come primarily from you. It hasn't been a conducive operating environment. It hasn't been an understanding government that puts in place and enforces good policies that make it easier for you to be who you are and to do what you do. The resilience has actually come from within you. And I'd like us to talk a little bit about what I discovered when I sat down with various young creatives and tried to understand, how do you survive? Like, how are you actually making money, paying your bills, living your dreams whilst expressing yourself and being able to do that, without shame or without apology? What are the things that have helped creative communities like you survive in such difficult environments and difficult circumstances and coming from such difficult places? And the things that I learned, well, first is shared value. The creative communities that I studied that were working together, that were resilient and that were actually productive, had shared values. Beliefs that were similar, mindsets that were similar, attitudes that were similar when it came to their creative output, their creative enterprise, and just themselves as individuals. What do you stand for? What do you represent? What is it about you and the people that you connect with that makes it, that gives you the confidence to say, yeah, I'll refer Larry. And I would. Somebody came and said, hey, I'd refer Larry. And I wouldn't be worried that Larry's going to embarrass me, or Larry's going to steal my client, or Larry's going to do a bad job. But what are those things that connect you with the community that you find yourself gravitating towards? Because many of us have these sort of communities that we are a part of that are maybe accidental, so we fell into it. Things are hard, you find someone to connect with, and that person connects you to someone else. And over time, you find yourself in the same circle of people. Yeah? Some of those people are in this room this morning. What is it about your neighbor that says, hey, you know what? I believe in what you're doing, and I believe in who you are, and I feel like I resonate with you, and we can actually go the distance together, and I can trust that. What is it about your neighbor? Yeah? The second thing I learned is that a lot of what we do is based on a trust economy. What does this mean? If I trust you, like I said, I trust Larry. If somebody comes to me and says, can you recommend a good musician? Can you recommend a good researcher? Can you recommend a good writer? Your name should be the first name that comes to mind. Why? Because I trust that you will not damage my brand if I refer you to someone else. You will not go and do something that's contrary to my values, that's contrary to what I believe is important. You have a work ethic that I respect that is similar to mine. And therefore, what you do isn't going to mess with my money, basically. That's what a trust economy is. So, are you part of a trust economy? Are there people within your network who you do business with? Yeah? And underneath, the underlying activity that we do that pays us is business. And we shouldn't shy away from that. As creatives, we shouldn't be, oh, well, you know, I'm a creative person and I don't want to, you know, yes, we are creative people, but we're creative people who need to pay rent and buy food, and we need to go on holiday and live our best lives. So there is an economic application to what we do. And in a trust economy, we're able to find ways to carry out our economic activity in a way that doesn't compromise our values, in a way that doesn't take away our creative expression, but allows us to excel, allows us to grow, allows us to be productive, and sustainably so. Yeah? Yeah? Are we together? Okay. Now, okay, trust, values, community, what does that all boil down to? If we're talking about getting to a place past perhaps dependency. And if any of you know me, you know that I have been for a long time an advocate for entrepreneurship in the sense that every creative person, every young person should be able to stand on their own 2 feet. You should be able to decide what you do with your money, how you choose to live. You should have, you know, true economic emancipation is about you being able to make decisions about how you're going to live your life. And not having to sort of fit a mold, not having to sort of bend to an agenda because there's money there, and maybe somebody calls you and says, hey, come and this mural. And it's completely against your morals and against your values, but there's money. So you're like, yeah, I'll just do it because I need the money. We need to get past that. We need to be able to have revenue streams that we create for ourselves that allow us to make choices. Yeah, that give us the ability to be economically emancipated. How do we do that? Now, some of the communities, the creative communities that I studied, as I mentioned earlier, came together, and what they did was they considered the resources they have. So Takura is really great at research. Larry is a good speaker. You know, Kudzi is really good with money and numbers. This is my tribe. How do we take those resources in terms of human resources, abilities, and skills, and take the $5 I have, the $10 he has, the $50 she has, and the car that he has? How do we combine those resources to find pathways to productivity, to find ways to generate revenue and to create so that we are able to all be sustainable? Yeah? How do we do that? Now, a concept that I came across is that of bricolage. And this is really the ability to do that, to combine skills, to be able to look at your community, at your tribe, and say, okay, guys, amongst us, what do we have? Before we go to a donor, before we go to a corporate with a begging bowl, before we go anywhere, or have to listen to and bend to the requirements of other people, what do we have? And how can we use what we have to create new products, new services, new outputs that we can sell to people who want them? Because that's essentially what economy is, right? You need something, I have it. Depending on how much it means to you, you will determine how much you're willing to pay for it. So that's basic economics. You know, I have bread, you want bread. How much do you want it? Are you willing to pay $5 for it, $1 for it? That transaction. So we as creatives need to believe enough in the product that we have, which is our creative output, that we are able to go to an open market and say, you know what? For your marketing department at your company, your creative output is not that great. Here, we are able to come in and give you better graphics, better copy, better images. You know, we're able to present better events for you. And this is our price. And collectively, it was found that it was easier to do that as a group than as an individual. So these creative communities come together and say, how do we use maybe Larry's ability to talk, to go and negotiate for us, and you know, get better terms when we're now trying to actively earn money from contracts? How do we do that? I'm not good at talking to people, so I'm not going to be the one at the front, but maybe he can go and broker that deal and come back, and then we all are able to have better output from it, better income. Does that make sense? So can we use bricolage, a bricolage mindset says, I don't have everything, but my community, my tribe, if we come together, we have enough that we can combine our resources and be able to find pathways to generate revenue, pathways to economic emancipation. And therefore, we'll be able to make meaningful decisions about what we do, when we do it, how much we do it for. And we're not bound by the person who has the purse strings. Does that make sense? You know, recently, I spoke at a British Council event where we were having a conversation around the global north, global south dynamic. Is there a power imbalance was the question. And how can that be addressed? And the reality is that there is. In any dynamic where one party comes and they have money and an agenda, and the other party is the vehicle to execute that agenda for a fee, typically that is not a equal conversation. It's not a co-creative conversation. It's very much a, this is what I want to do. If you want money, you will do it the way I want it done. And really what we should be doing as a creative community is saying we need to move out of that space. And we need to get into spaces that promote equality. So I may not have money, but do I value what I do bring to the table? Because guess what? Without your creative skill and ability, that global north individual and their pocket, they're not going to achieve anything. They actually need you. And they see the value in executing their strategy through you, but you need to be able to see the value that you have. And sometimes on our own individually, we're not able to do that. We don't have the strength even to see past maybe, okay, today I have $10 in my pocket. If I take this contract, suddenly I'm in a different space, which is better for me. So maybe I need to just. Yeah? Typically we can be in that space. But what community does is it gives you the strength to be able to objectively look at every opportunity, at everything that comes your way and say, at the end of the day, when this is all said and done, what is the genuine impact on me? Can I live with myself having done this, taken this project, done this activity? Or am I literally going to sort of hate myself and say, okay, but at least I bought food. But if we say, no, we're not going to do that, let's come together, let's combine our resources. Let's collectively look at what we're able to do. Then I think we'll be in a better place. Yeah? You think? Yeah? Is this something we can do? Are you seeing that maybe you're already doing some of this? Yeah? Now that you think about it, you're like, hey, but yeah, me and Bob, we do that, kind of. Yeah? And it's important. Something else that these communities do really well, and also not necessarily deliberately, is learning. Now, it's fundamental that we don't take for granted our learning journey. If we aren't learning continuously, if we aren't constantly seeking knowledge, if we aren't constantly trying to improve what we know, improve how we do what we do, innovate in our spaces, we're actually not going to be able to come together using bricolage to create new things, to create new products, new services, to have new approaches and ways to negotiate, to manage that balance of power. If we're not learning, we're not growing. Yeah? And so learning and sharing what we learn with our communities has been a really big theme that came through in the research that I was doing. More creatives now are learning, and I mean, I think the way that the globe has worked, the way Google works, YouTube, you could probably learn anything online. But instead of just finding information, whether it's about the Revenue Authority or how to create a new app without actually being a coder, whatever it is that you're learning, sharing that learning amplifies the impact of information and research and evidence that can be utilized in your communities for you to now be able to move forward. Yeah? We need to not be afraid to read. You know, there's a thing that said, and for the Zimbabweans in the room, please forgive me, but there is a theory that says Zimbabweans don't read unless it's for a degree. So unless I'm going to get a piece of paper at the end that says I have a qualification, I'm not going to read it. Doesn't matter what it is. You can blow it up, make it pretty. I'm not going to read it. And I'm allowed to say that as a Zimbabwean. Please don't repeat this at tea. Just don't. It won't end well. But typically, you find that young people have the same sort of mindset. A lot of young people in this sort of microwave generation where everything is needing to happen now, everything is needing to be quick, we don't read. And one of my other hats is that I'm a lawyer. And so many times I come across, whether it's young creatives, young entrepreneurs, who are in a bad situation because they signed a contract that they didn't read. It sounded good, the money was good, the opportunities felt like if I don't do this now, the opportunity will pass. They will go to someone else. I'm not the only musician here. I'm not the only writer. I'm not the only podcaster, so I just have to sign. But then the fine print matters. And we need to be people who are willing to read. Read contracts. If you don't understand it, go to your community, find someone who does. But don't sign your soul away because you didn't bother to read the fine print. So whether it's a contract, whether it's a research study, maybe you're not academic, but there's a research study about your specific aspect of creativity. Find someone who will be able to explain it to you. Find someone who will be able to share the executive summary, as it were. But get the knowledge and use that knowledge to guide you as you build and you grow as yourself as a creative, but also in your community. Because without knowledge, we will perish. That's really how communities die. When you think about every one of our countries and how we have these political dynamics where the rural vote seems to always bring down the change we want to see. If you look closer, you'll see that how many of our governments achieve that is by ensuring that our populations are not educated. If you're not educated, you don't want to seek knowledge and understanding, you're not trying to read to learn, in the end, you'll find yourself in a dynamic where you lose. So let us not lose. Let us build economies that work. Yeah? And what ties all of that together? Partnership. Working together. Finding like-minded people. We talked about values. Yeah? We talked about trust. We've talked about learning and sharing knowledge. But we can't do that by ourselves. If you find yourself this morning in a community that doesn't resemble what I've shared, you're in the wrong place. You need to really ask yourself, should this be my tribe? Are these the people that I should be connecting with? And I'm not saying throw them away. I'm saying maybe they're Sunday people. But Monday to Friday, you need to be with other people. You know what I mean? And be with people that will push you, that will challenge you. You said you came to learn. Learn this. Surround yourself with people who will challenge you. People who make you feel like you're doing nothing. Whilst at the same time who will fight for you and who will not try and dim your light in order for them to shine. Surround yourself with people like that. And you won't go wrong. Because you will easily find that your values are similar. You'll easily find trust flowing amongst you, which makes it easier to use bricolage approaches to try and work together to build. It's a hard thing to ask people to put their money on the table. My money, my car, my this, my that, so that you can get a shot. It's a big ask. And remember, we're all coming from a space where we don't have much. So it's a very big ask when we say, hey, can we come together to help me go for this opportunity? So you want to surround yourself with people who will be able to be there for you in that 11th hour, who will go hard for you and will be willing to do what it takes to help you win, because they know you would equally do the same. Yeah? So I think the title of my talk was something about ownership. So maybe let's spend the last few minutes as I said, I'm a lawyer. And aside from bad contracts, something else that I see a lot in the work that I do, particularly with creatives, is how few creative people own their intellectual property, own the rights to their work, to their words, to their narrative. Too few of us are even asking the question. You know, there was I can't remember which country it was, but there's a tribe, it might have been in Kenya, that had this really great fabric that was made specifically in that community in the world and nowhere else. And when they tried to sort of develop and export it and maybe get some visibility around it, they found that it was a Chinese company had a patent, had registered it as I think maybe some kind of utility, and they owned basically the rights to the design for this pattern, for this community. And that's because somebody came into their community, saw what they were doing, thought, this is great. I want to own this, and went and registered the IP for it. And those who actually created it, those who owned the heritage behind it, lost out. Are you willing to lose your heritage? You create. Everyone in the room creates, right? We all create something. Do you own the rights to what you create? Do you even know how you would do that? Have you ever asked? How do you protect something when you're not even sure that it even still is yours, even though you created it? And it does sound crazy that you could not own something that you created, but in this world, yes. What matters is who registered first. So if you are a creator, and it matters to you that you have ownership, it matters to you that you leave a legacy for the generations to come from the work that you do. Don't leave it to chance. Don't hope that someone won't come along and see what you've done and think, oh, I'd like some of that. Find out. Do what you need to do. Protect yourself. And protect your work. Protect your voice. Yeah? This is what will help us drive towards ownership. We protect what is ours, what we create. We come together and combine our resources so we can make decisions about how we earn our money, so that we can become economically emancipated. Earning money and being financially free is not the same thing. Can we say that together? Earning money and being financially free is not the same thing. It's very easy to do a hustle here, do a hustle there, but ultimately, you don't hold anything. Generational wealth doesn't just happen. And it's also not ugly. It's actually a good thing to be able to have a legacy that you pass down to the next generation. But the starting point is you taking control and ownership of what you create, what assets you hold, and making sure that they actually belong to you. Yeah? Can we agree on that? Okay. This last slide is then the research I was telling you about was published in September by Springer's publishers in London. And that's the book, which is really expensive. So if you really, really want to read it, please let me know, and I'll hook you up. Okay? Thank you.
Yes, we started off with show me the money, isn't it? So one of the key things I got from that presentation is that resilience has largely been internal. And I know this coming from Zimbabwe, where a lot of the times it's, the most common phrase is called making a plan. Like, it doesn't work out, we're going to figure it out, we'll make a plan. And how many, okay, outside from Zimbabwe, how many of the creatives here have had to, what I call, make a plan when getting their business together or their concept working? By a show of hands? Had to In Shona, well, it's not actually Shona, but Kia, like, we call these people locksmiths. So what it means is you do whatever it takes. You hustle. You make places. I mean, I'll tell you one thing. Just being here is a big part of that. Being part of the conversation, being there in the room, being part of where this animal they call African Crossroads is going to go to, is a show of commitment that I'm going to make a plan to be part of that conversation. Because some people are like, okay, I'm not going there. I'm not going to make any money there directly right now. But ultimately, the question is, investing your time is one of the most important things you'll do as far as building your business. Another key one is the lost heritage. Like, so many of us, I'm doing research on the Great Zimbabwe. How many of the artifacts were taken to the global north and we just don't own them anymore? They sit in museums and sometimes not even public facing. But it's because they were claimed by someone or discovered. So we like to call that. The Mosiatunu was discovered and called the Victoria Falls. Because somebody named it, now they own it. Or they perpetually have an idea about it. So a great presentation once again. What noise do we make, by the way? Okay, 1, 2, 3, go. Okay, there we go. It's an African festival. We're doing it. It's getting there. And I think Annie's getting there as well. I just saw it. She's like, yeah, give me like one more time. She's going to be whistling and ululating at the same time. How that works, I'm not sure. But we're going to take a health break. We're going to come back here in 25 minutes. Please make sure you talk to somebody you have not had a chat with, okay? That also means not calling your mom at home to say, hey. Because, I mean, you kind of known her all your life, right? So what I'm saying is that let's just we're going to take a quick break. There's some refreshments outside. We're going to meet back. Please start coming back in at 22 so that we're settled by 1:45. We've got a couple of panels that are going to be happening between post-health break and lunch, and there's going to be a lot of enlightenment. But meanwhile, we're going to get back to the Kiunga EP. We're going to play music from that particular EP. And yes, let's get involved.
I want to see our Africa rising against all odds to be the best it can be. I want to see our Africa rising against all odds to be the best it can be. I want to see our leaders rising against corruption to lead the best they can lead. I want to see our leaders rising against corruption to lead the best they can lead. Oh, Havana, Africa, Mukasima.
Recording stopped.